The first time Ethan Bell saw the color, it was around 3 a.m. He hadn't slept in 2 nights, not properly. He was sitting in the kitchen, sketchbook open, hunched over a drawing he'd restarted 4 times. The coffee in his mug had gone cold, and he couldn't remember pouring it. There was a door at the end of the hall, an old basement door, warped and crooked in its frame. It had been stuck for years, and Ethan had always left it that way. No reason to go down there. But tonight, something was different. Not sound, not smell. Light. A faint glow bleeding out from beneath the door. Faint, yes, but wrong. It wasn't yellow or blue or white. It was like trying to remember a dream you never had, Ethan would later say. Like a color that shouldn't exist. He stood up, moved down the hall. Each step made the glow brighter, more alive. His head buzzed, skin tingled. He reached for the doorknob. Cold. Ice cold. The moment he touched it, he felt something on the other side. Not a sound. More like pressure. A presence. Like someone standing inches from the door, holding their breath. Ethan blinked. The light vanished, and the silence swallowed everything. He stood there a long time, long enough for the heat from his fingers to warm the metal knob. Then he turned and walked back to the kitchen. He didn't finish the drawing. The next morning, Ethan called Dr. Meyer, his old psychiatrist. He hadn't spoken to her in 6 years. "You told me if I ever saw something strange that I should call," he said. Her voice was calm but cautious. "Ethan, are you still taking your medication?" "I stopped when I was 23. You said I might not need it forever." She was quiet. Then, "That was under supervision and regular sessions." "It wasn't like before," he said. "This wasn't hallucination. It was real. Schizophrenia can lie to you. You know that." "No, it was real. I could feel it watching me." That night, Ethan went back to the door. Nothing. No glow. He put his hand on the knob again. Cold, yes, but not unnatural. Just an old door in an old house. He opened it. Dust, stairs, cracks in the concrete. A basement like any other. He left the door open and turned off the lights, just to prove it to himself. No glow. Day 3. He didn't sleep again, but he started drawing. Not the graphic novel he'd been working on for weeks. No, this was different. He drew the color. Page after page. Dozens of variations, swirls, shapes, pulses of light in thick graphite and watercolor. And the more he drew, the more he felt it, beneath the surface. A hum. Low, warm, inviting. At 2:44 a.m., Ethan heard footsteps in the basement, not heavy, just cautious. One, then another, then silence. He stood at the top of the stairs, didn't say a word. The air was thicker now, and the door. It wasn't just a door, it was a barrier. The color was back, leaking under the frame, brighter, pulsing, breathing. Ethan didn't sleep that night either. He sat on the kitchen floor, eyes locked on the hall as the color flickered. Softly, like it was waiting. Not for him to open the door, but for him to see it again, to remember. Ethan started recording. Not video, audio. He set up an old tape recorder on the top step of the basement stairs, right outside the crooked door. Hit record. Let it run overnight. The next morning, he listened. For 6 hours, there was nothing but static and silence. Until 4:03 a.m., that's when it started. A soft hum, barely audible, like the low droning of a refrigerator, but organic. Breathing. Then a whisper. Not words, tones. Like a voice trying to form language, but only halfway there. He rewound. Played it again. And again. Every time it sounded closer, like it wanted to be understood. Ethan didn't call Dr. Meyer this time. He didn't want more pills. He didn't want grounding techniques or mindfulness exercises. He wanted to know what it was. And somewhere deep in his bones, he felt the answer wasn't madness. It was memory. That night, the color came back, but not just under the basement door. This time, it seeped out from beneath the bathroom door, too. And the closet. And the tiny trapdoor in the attic floor. Every entrance, every closed space, every threshold. It was spreading. He placed the recorder in the closet. 4:03 a.m. Same hum, same rising frequency. And this time, something else. A voice, soft, measured, not quite human, but almost. He used to be here. Ethan's skin crawled. He played it again. He used to be here. Not a hallucination, not a delusion. A message. The next day, he started sketching again. Not random shapes, not just color. Architecture. Rooms that didn't exist in his house. A corridor lined with mirrors. A stairwell that twisted downward forever. A window facing a wall of eyes. He didn't know where these images came from, only that they weren't his. At 3:58 a.m., Ethan sat in the hallway, recorder beside him, sketchbook on his lap. This time he was ready. The door to the basement creaked, just a little. The knob twitched, and the color began to bloom again. Not like a glow now, but like smoke made of light, curling through the cracks in the frame. He stared into it. Then he heard the voice again, not through the recorder. This time it was in the room with him, right behind the door. You left me. He stood, heart pounding. Who are you? He whispered. Silence. Then, like a breath against the wood, you were me. He stumbled back. The hum in his ears grew sharper, more rhythmic. It wasn't just sound anymore. It had pattern, purpose, like code. He turned the recorder off. Didn't need it anymore. He could hear it all without the tape now. At 4:07 a.m., Ethan opened his eyes. He didn't remember falling asleep. The hallway was dark. The color, gone. The door, open. Just an inch, just enough. Inside the basement, the stairs were visible. So was the floor. But something was missing. His shadow. He reached out. No shadow. No shape on the wall. Like the light had swallowed part of him. He closed the door slowly, his hand trembling. And for the first time, Ethan wasn't sure if he was real, or if he'd already gone back. Wherever back was. Ethan didn't leave the house for 3 days. The window stayed covered. The phone was off. Food didn't matter. Sleep never came. He wasn't afraid. He was obsessed. He began reviewing old sketchbooks, trying to trace a pattern, looking for signs that this presence, this color, had been there before. And to his surprise, he found one. A small sketch, drawn when he was 17, tucked in the back of a notebook labeled Group Therapy, Week 2. It was faint, just a rough spiral in blue ink. But beneath it, in tiny handwriting, he'd written, "Don't look in the color too long. It sees you back." He didn't remember writing it. He didn't even remember keeping the notebook. The entry was dated the same week he'd been committed to St. Vincent's Psychiatric Center after the incident with the mirror. A week he'd supposedly spent in complete silence, according to his records. He stared at the spiral. It almost seemed to vibrate on the page. What disturbed him wasn't that he'd drawn it. It was that now he understood what it meant. He remembered it. Not just in dreams, but in pieces. A hallway with too many doors. The sound of dripping that never stopped. A girl in the distance who never turned around. A doctor whose hand was made of wires. Had any of it really happened? The boundaries of his memory began to blur. He started writing notes to himself, small affirmations, reminders. Your name is Ethan Bell. You live at 128 Grover Street. You were never in the basement. He taped them around the house, one on the fridge, one on the bedroom door, one on the mirror. He needed to be sure of something, anything. But the more he tried to anchor himself, the more the house seemed to resist. Lights flickered in steady rhythms like a heartbeat. The TV turned itself on. Only static. His phone rang 3 times a day, and each time when he answered, it was his own voice. Garbled, underwater, whispering things he couldn't quite understand. Always at the same time. 4:03 a.m. He stopped answering after the 5th time. On the 4th night, Ethan found something that shouldn't have existed. A photograph tucked into one of his old sketchbooks. One he had no memory of taking. He looked 13, standing in front of a door. But not just any door. The door. The same warped basement door from his house. Except in the photo, it wasn't in his house. It was in the center of a hospital hallway, surrounded by nurses and men in white coats. And he was smiling. On the back, written in crayon, was a single sentence. He finally came home. His hands shook. He turned the photo over again and again, hoping it would change. It didn't. That night he burned it in the kitchen sink, but the next morning it was back in the sketchbook, slightly more faded, like it had aged overnight. Ethan stopped using mirrors. He began seeing things behind him, not people exactly, but shapes, flickers of movement, hands that weren't his, eyes in places where no eyes should be. One morning while shaving, he looked up and saw himself smiling, except he wasn't smiling. His reflection stared back, mouth wide, teeth bared, as if something inside him was wearing his face. He didn't go near mirrors after that. That same evening, the basement door was open again, but this time it wasn't just the glow or the voice. There was a smell, like rust and wet stone, and something older, something like rot. He stood at the top of the stairs, and for the first time he heard his own voice rising up from the darkness. Ethan, it's time to remember. He didn't respond, but part of him wanted to. In the corner of the basement, there was now a mirror leaning against the wall. He hadn't put it there. He hadn't been down there in years. The mirror was covered in fingerprints. Dozens, hundreds, all from the inside. Ethan stopped sleeping altogether. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the basement mirror, tall, cracked, covered in smears. He'd see his own reflection whispering things he couldn't hear, mouthing words that didn't match the sound. And sometimes, the reflection didn't follow his movements at all. It was like watching someone try to imitate him, and failing. The notes he'd written for himself began to change. At first, it was just the handwriting, slightly off. Then the messages started saying things he never wrote. You don't live at 128 Grover Street. Stop pretending. There is no upstairs. You are still down here. Why did you lock me in? He tried tearing them down, but new ones kept appearing. On his pillow, inside the fridge, even in the microwave. Always signed the same way. E. He started to question everything. The house felt unfamiliar. The layout seemed to shift when he wasn't looking. Hallways stretched longer. A door upstairs disappeared for a day, then came back. The living room window began showing a backyard he didn't recognize. There had never been a swing set out there. But now, there it was, rusted, swaying gently in a wind that didn't exist. At exactly 4:03 a.m., Ethan stood at the basement door, staring into the dark, No color tonight, no hum, just silence. He descended, 1 step, then 2, then 5. Each creaking stair felt like a decision he couldn't undo. At the bottom, the mirror was waiting. He walked toward it slowly. The surface was cracked down the center, like it had been hit from the inside. His reflection stared back, but it blinked out of sync. He raised his right hand. The reflection raised its left. He opened his mouth. The reflection smiled. Ethan whispered, "What are you?" And it answered. The lips moved in time with his voice, but he hadn't spoken the words. "I'm the one you left behind." The lights flickered, and then he remembered. St. Vincent's, the year he turned 17. There was no incident with the mirror. That was what the doctors told his parents. In truth, he'd broken down during group therapy, screaming about colors no one else could see, about voices inside the walls. They sedated him. He didn't speak for days. They put him in room B13. No windows, no light, just a mirror. He wasn't supposed to talk to it, but he did. Every night. For weeks. Now he touched the mirror. The glass was warm, almost alive. His reflection moved closer, smiling, wide, too wide. "You let them take me," it said. "You ran." "No," Ethan whispered. "I got out." "No," the reflection replied. "You're still here. You never left. You just buried me so deep you forgot I was you." Ethan stepped back. The mirror rippled. "But now I'm ready to come up." He ran up the stairs, slammed the basement door, pushed furniture in front of it, locked it, nailed it, taped over the cracks with towels, anything to keep it out. But it wasn't just down there anymore. Every reflective surface in the house, windows, screens, doorknobs, started to feel wrong, like something was watching from the other side, waiting. He covered them all, slept on the floor with the lights on. The next morning, the basement door was open, furniture untouched, tape peeled away clean. The towels were folded neatly beside the threshold, and on the top step written in chalk, "Let's switch this time." Ethan stopped trying to fight it. He understood now. It wasn't about fear. It wasn't even about madness. It was about debt. Something had been buried deep inside him, and now, after years of silence, it had clawed its way up from the dark, reaching the surface of his mind. He called it the other. He no longer questioned what it was. Whether it was a hallucination, a psychic parasite, or something born from trauma. Whether it came from the hospital, from his childhood, from somewhere worse. None of it mattered anymore. It had his voice, his thoughts, his memories, and it wanted out. He tried to leave the house again, but the streets were wrong. Every turn led him back to Grover Street, even when he drove straight. The GPS froze. The clocks all blinked 4:03 over and over. He passed the same car, the same man walking his dog, the same yellow school bus, again and again. The world had become a loop, like someone had copied and pasted reality. He stood in the middle of the street and screamed, "Let me out!" A woman pushing a stroller walked past and smiled politely. She had no face, just smooth skin, like wax. Ethan went back inside. That night, the whispers returned. Not from the basement this time, but from inside the walls, from behind the mirror, from the drains, from everywhere. Some sounded like him, some didn't. High, brittle, childlike voices. One said, "Why'd you leave me down there?" Another whispered, "I want to wear you like a coat." And a third, softer than the rest, "We miss your skin." He curled up in the bathtub and cried until he vomited. On the 5th day, he found a message scrawled across the wall in something thick and dark. "Open the door. Let us decide." And beneath it, written in perfect, tidy handwriting. He's not the only one who wants out. That's when Ethan realized there were more. He stood in front of the basement door again. No furniture, no locks, no resistance. It had been waiting. He went down slowly, one hand gripping a flashlight, the other holding a kitchen knife. The mirror was gone. In its place stood a version of himself, same height, same clothes, same scars on the knuckles. But the eyes were wrong, too bright, too calm. This version smiled and said, "I've been waiting for you." Ethan raised the knife. "You're not me." The other tilted his head. "I'm the part you threw away, the part that saw the truth and broke. While you got to live out there, I've been stuck down here, rotting, but I'm stronger now. You made me strong." Ethan hesitated. The other stepped closer. "Let's make it fair," he said. "One of us leaves, one of us stays." Ethan laughed, sharp, bitter. "You think I'll just switch places with you?" But he already felt it. The pull. Like the mirror had always been inside him, a door waiting to be opened. The other lowered his voice. "You're tired, aren't you? You've been unraveling since the day they let you out. You don't even know if this is real." Another step forward. "You're afraid this is the only version of you that ever existed." Ethan lowered the knife and whispered, "What happens if I say yes?" The other smiled, wide, patient, almost kind. "Then you can finally rest, and I'll live the life you ruined." The moment Ethan said yes, the room seemed to exhale. The air grew thick and warm, like breath on skin. Somewhere beneath his feet, something shifted, like stone grinding against stone. A low hum rose from the basement floor, vibrating in his teeth, in his bones, in his skull. The other Ethan opened his arms and whispered, "Come home." Ethan stepped forward, just one step, and the walls around them blurred, became the corridors of St. Vincent's, became the hallway of Grover Street, became an infinite hallway lined with doors that never ended. With every breath, Ethan felt less like himself. Memories flickered. His mother, a birthday cake, the pills, the mirror, the night he bit through his tongue in group therapy. It all began to drift. He reached out, touched the other. Their hands met, palm to palm. For a brief second, everything stood still, and then it was like plunging into a freezing black ocean. When Ethan opened his eyes, he was lying on the living room floor. Afternoon light spilled through the windows. The walls were clean. The furniture was back in place. No notes, no whispers. The house was silent. He stood up. Everything felt new, lighter, like he'd slept for 100 years. He walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, the chairs, the doorknobs. The air didn't feel thick anymore, just air. In the bathroom, he looked into the mirror. His reflection smiled. He smiled back. Outside, children laughed somewhere down the street. A bird landed on the porch rail. Ethan sat on the steps and breathed in the summer air. He was free. 3 days later, a mailman knocked. Ethan answered. The mailman blinked, confused. "Sorry, thought this house was vacant." Ethan smiled. "Not anymore." The man tilted his head. "You okay? You look a little pale." Ethan nodded slowly. "Still adjusting. Long trip." The mailman handed him a letter and walked off. Ethan shut the door and looked at the envelope. It was addressed to Ethan Maris, 128 Grover Street. The handwriting was familiar. He opened it. Inside, a single note. "You left me here. You were supposed to stay. I'm still down here. E." Ethan crumpled it and tossed it into the fire. The flames didn't touch it. In the basement, the mirror was back, cracked, warped. From inside, a pale, wide-eyed version of Ethan stared out, banging, screaming, bleeding from the knuckles. But no sound came through. No one could hear him anymore. And upstairs, the other Ethan lived his new life, wearing Ethan's face, answering Ethan's phone, laughing with Ethan's voice, because only one of them walked away. And the real Ethan? He still sees the color behind the door. Every day. And it never stops screaming.